How's everybody doing this morning? All right. Man, give it up for the worship team, right? Like, I don't even have to be up here anymore. That's a good thing, right? Like I love it. I'm just listening and I'm like, man, they don't need me anymore. That's part of ministry, right? We want to train people up to take our place, and it's incredible. Every week. I think that's probably the first week since I've been on staff here at Stone Point that I've been able to worship from the congregation, man, and I miss that. It's awesome. I'm not the one going off, so somebody's plugged in somewhere. Somebody's phone is. Hey guys, so yesterday was the 4th of July, right? And we know it's Independence Day for the United States, right? And what's like Travis was talking about, right? That gives us the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and it's all about freedom, right? Well, as I was praying, when Pastor Todd had asked me to preach this message this week, I'd been praying about it and what was I going to talk about. And the Lord led me to veer off of our path of preaching out of the Gospel of Matthew and to talk about freedom from bondage, guys, breaking those chains of bondage that we have and how Jesus Christ has set us free. And as I was praying about, what scripture to go through, I thought, well, what better than one of the captivity epistles, right? Because the Apostle Paul, he was in chains and he wrote, 4 letters. And one of them being Philippians, which is probably the happiest book in the entire Bible. And, it's all about perspective. And he was in chains when he wrote this. So what I wanted to focus on today was in chapter 1 in Philippians, verses 12 through 26. And I'm just going to go ahead and read those now, and we'll kind of just see what's going on with Paul right here. He says, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. It is true that some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry." Now think about this. Paul's saying right here, in essence, that not everybody liked him. I want everybody in here, touch somebody next to you. Okay, touch somebody right now and say, not everybody's supposed to like the way you act. In fact, look at the person to the other side of you, the one that you didn't want to touch the first time, and tell them that if everybody likes you, you're not doing something right. But others out of goodwill, the latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here. I really like how he said that. I am put here. Not by accident, not even by the decree of evil human beings. Paul is just saying, I'm put here. I might have been sent here by the Romans, but I was put here for the purpose of God. How many times are we in a situation and we don't look at it that way? We don't look at it as God put me here. Right? He's got you there for a reason, to advance the gospel and not in fear, regardless of what that is. For the defense of the gospel, the former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I am in chains. But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, that Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. Not because everything's going great in my life, right? It doesn't matter what chains you're in. We share the gospel. Not because I got a new car. Not because I got a new guitar, not because of my circumstances that caused me to feel good about myself right now, but because of this I rejoice. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and God's provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Paul's saying, I win either way, right? If the situation turns around or if it stays the same, I still win. If I am to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet what shall I choose? I don't know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ. Paul's like, hey man, I kind of want to get out of here right now. I'm an old man. I'd like to see Jesus. I got crowns waiting for me and stuff in heaven, which is better by far. But it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain, and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith, so that through my being with you again, your boasting in Christ will abound on account of me. That's a whole bunch of scripture, right? That's a ton. Like we read that and it's like, okay, Pastor Matthew, what are you getting to here? Well, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this, right? So if we go to verse 13, Paul says, I'm in chains for Christ. Verse 22, yet what shall I choose? We've all got a choice. I want you ask the person in the seat next to you again, the one that you talked to a second ago. Ask them, do you want to be free? My kids, they used to tell me that I sounded like an old man, right? I'm not that old. But they used to tell me that, when they wanted to do something crazy, kind of like yesterday, if you were at our house for the 4th of July, we had this big 75-foot water slide that was 12 foot wide, 75 foot long. And I kind of joked with the kids early on and some of the adults. I was like, yeah, if the adults get on there, I'll do it. Thinking in my mind, I'm not going to do that. That's a bad idea for a guy my age, man. I thought Pastor Todd's out of town. I got to preach tomorrow. If I go down that slide, I'm going to end up breaking a rib or breaking a leg or breaking an arm. It's just not a good idea. And the kids were kind of joking with me, and they were like, you said if they went down that you'd, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to do that. Or kind of like a few years ago, Michelle and I, we got Netflix right when it first, well, it didn't first come out, but it first came out to us. And like, when we got it, it took me forever to figure out how to get it on our smart TV. It was the first smart TV we had. And like I called our kids, Samantha and Tyler, and I'm like asking them how to help me get this set up and stuff. And when we got it fired up, Michelle and I, for 72 hours, we binge watched 3 series. Like I was wired on caffeine and Walking Dead. And I called Samantha and I'm like, have you seen Netflix? It's incredible. And she's like, that's like 2 years ago. We're on Amazon Prime now. What are you talking about? And, to me, it was awesome, but I could tell to her she thought I was like an old man. Oh my gosh, you're just getting to that? Or how many of you guys remember MySpace? How many are old enough to remember MySpace? So I had an album out like 13 years ago. And to me, I'm like, oh, this music's current, it's relevant. Like, I'm going to share it with all the kids' friends. They're really going to they need to hear this. Like, there's a move here. They need to hear this. So I start sharing it. inviting all of their friends to come to my MySpace page, and like none of them are responding. And I'm thinking, what's going on here, man? It's like cool album art, good songs, like. So I go to Samantha and Tyler, and I'm like, hey man, I sent friend requests to like all your friends, like Jared and Jake and Josh and Emily and all their friends. And I said, well, where'd you send them at? I said, I put them on MySpace. I sent them friend requests. I want them to come to my page and listen. You know, I got a player on there. I want them to hear my music. And they're like, MySpace? We're on Facebook now. So I'm like, okay, what's Facebook? So, you know, just another time when they like made me feel like this old man. And in my mind, I'm thinking, as they're kind of poking fun at me, I'm thinking, I pay for all your devices. And I'm still the coolest guy that you know. And all those friends that you're messaging and talking to that think they're cooler than me that are broke, like I'm the one that controls this. I can turn it off if I want to. Yeah, they just didn't think I was that cool though. And I kind of want to say that to Paul when I'm reading Philippians 1. When I was reading it this week, that was where my mind went to. And I'm kind of thinking like, what struck me about Philippians 1 this week and what reminded me of my kids was that Paul, he sounds like an old man in this, right? He sounds like he's got that old man wisdom. You know, that old man wisdom that's kind of like, you ever seen an old guy that's like I mean, if your car was turned over in a ditch, he comes over there and he's like, he's just got that old man strength, you know? Like, old, you know, as you get older, you just get that wisdom and strength in your mind and your body, even though you may appear to be frail. But I think that only comes with time. And Paul has that kind of wisdom that I think you could only have, that someone could have to write from prison. I mean, because you think he's in chains in prison. And it's one of the 4 captivity letters, Philippians is, that he wrote while he's in chains. You know, he wrote Colossians, Ephesians, Philemon, and Philippians. And it's a paradox to begin with, because who could write the happiest book in the Bible again and be in chains in prison? I mean, it's crazy to think about it, right? But if you think about it, he's writing about the progress of the gospel while he's in chains in lockdown. And man, that right there alone would preach an entire series for a year, that someone could have that. You know, I think sometimes it's in the worst season of our life that God's doing the most through you. But we fail to realize that. It's a true story. Sometimes when you feel completely limited, you know, when you feel like you've completely lost control of everything, that's when God is really getting you in a place of surrender. That's when he can do the deep work inside of you, when you're surrendered. That's when he can get past all of the superficial, cliche Christian stuff where, like, yeah, I know all the right answers to everything. You know, people see me, and yeah, I go to church on Sunday, and I go to a life group. But God, you know, he gets beyond that superficialness. And then he throws a trial at you, and you get into a situation. Have you guys ever had God jerk the wheel away from you? How many of you guys know the song, Carrie Underwood's song, Jesus Take the Wheel? You know, Jesus take the wheel. Yeah, not that kind. It's not like you're not asking him to take the wheel. Like, you're just going on and you think things are going great, and then God just like jerks the wheel out from you and puts you on a totally different path, puts you in a totally different situation. I mean, he's taken complete control, and you're out of control. How many control freaks do we have in here? I'll admit, I'm a control freak. Travis, now come on. I'm just talking to you yesterday about working in your house, and you're like, yeah, I just kind of, yeah. There are 2 things in my life that I don't like. okay, that I hate actually. That's flying in airplanes and riding in the car with my daughter driving. Now, if you put me in a situation where I have to do both those things in the same day or at the same time, it's my own personal Hades. And a couple years ago, we were moving my grandparents from Florida to Lexington, Kentucky. Michelle had to work that day. Guess who took me to the airport? Our daughter did. On the way there, I'm like, oh, dear Lord, I'm either going to die in the car or I'm going to die in the airplane on the way to Florida. I knew it was horrible. It was horrible, horrible. My flight was delayed 6 hours, and I needed some of that old man advice right then. I needed some of that Paul wisdom. And I think we're interested to see Paul now because he's older. You know, it's been decades since Jesus knocked him off of his high horse before he made him go blind, physically blind. He took away his physical sight so he could show him something spiritual. He knocked him down so he could raise him up again. How many times has that happened in your life? It didn't feel like it at the time. But you know, God's working. Paul's at the point in his life, you know, he's way past that point of caring what people think at all. If I was preaching this message to our youth group, to the Transformed, I'd say Paul's at that point where he's like, I don't care what you think about me. I don't care. I'm going out in my pajamas to Walmart, whatever. I don't care. I don't have time for that. Only one thing in Paul's life mattered to him right now, and that was purpose. He wasn't worried about popularity. He was worried about purpose. He wasn't worried about a promotion. He was worried about purpose. He wasn't worried about prosperity. He was worried about purpose. He had completely moved past the point of needing anyone to validate who he was. You know, what's Pastor Todd? He's been talking, what would Jesus do, or what did Jesus do? Well, Paul had like this whole other slogan, and I think it was in Philippians 18. It's like, what was it? What does it matter? WDIT, what does it matter? Like that was his slogan. And think about how much better your life would be if we lived with that. If we were like, can't pay the water bill this month. What's it matter? Can't go out to eat this week to a fast food restaurant. What's it matter? Right? My house isn't 5,000 square foot. It's 900. What's it matter? I don't have a brand new car. I'm driving a 20-year-old car that we purchased for our daughter originally. What's it matter? None of that stuff matters, right? That's the kind of attitude. That's the kind of wisdom that Paul had. And I don't think you get that in your 30s. I don't think you even get that in your 40s. But think about it. Paul's older. Look at all the things that's happened in his life at this point. He's been shipwrecked. He's been beaten. He's been imprisoned. He's been shamed. He's been called a fraud. He's been called a fake. Think about all the stuff that he's been through. But he kept on preaching. They threw him in prison, and he kept on preaching. God busted him out, though. In fact, the first time he went to Philippi, when he was getting the entire mission started there, what'd they do? They put him in prison. It's like this common theme in Paul's life. Everywhere I go, I'm going to try to advance the gospel, and they're going to put me in shackles. But I'm just going to keep on. I'm going to keep preaching. I'm going to keep praising. And what did he do that first time when he was in Philippi, when they put him in prison? He started singing praises at midnight. At the top of his lungs, he starts singing praises. And what happened? At midnight, all the chains on all the prisoners came off. I got a question for you guys. Are you going to let your chains break your praise? Or are you going to let your praise break your chains? I'm going to say that again. I want you guys to repeat it with me. Are you going to let your chains break your praise, or are you going to let your praise break your chains? Sometimes God's going to use your situation to set somebody else free. Have you been questioning what you're going through? I do it all the time. And I know this stuff. You know, when we write sermons, I'm preaching to myself. When Pastor Todd does, when any pastor does, we're preaching to ourselves. Have you been questioning what you're going through? And it's not even about you. You know, you get through that season and it's like, man, that wasn't even for me. The whole time we were in Lexington, for almost 3 years, I'm like questioning this, like, God, why have you got me here? The whole time I was focused on me, and it was never about me. And God showed that to Michelle and I through situations that we were in. And now I even see even greater purpose because now we see Bryson is here. Like, Bryson and I served together in Lexington. And the whole season I'm questioning, God, why am I here? Part of the reason was the relationships that we were working out with Bryson, with his family, because God could see what was going to happen down the road. You know, he knew that he was going to lead him here, and we had to be in that season, that difficult season of serving, to form those relationships so he could work to advance the gospel. And it wasn't about me. It was always all about the gospel, only about the gospel. We got to be willing to embrace our chains, right? Let those chains free somebody else. This is some wisdom that only God can give you after you've lived a while. I'm starting to enter into that, I think. I'm starting to see some of this stuff. I'm starting to realize some of that, you know, some of that wisdom. And it's like, I think of it as I'm reading Philippians, I'm like, that's like, you know, the Apostle Paul got swag, man. Like, he does. He's got that old man wisdom. He's just like, anything that happens, what's it matter? You going to beat me some more? You going to keep me in chains? You know, when they said, hey, Paul, imagine him nowadays times. They got a fake Snapchat of you, man. They're posting out all this stuff that says you're saying this and doing this. And he's like, it don't matter. It don't matter a bit. Hey, Paul, they're making fun of the shoes you're wearing. They're making fun of the car you're driving. It don't matter. None of that stuff matters. It's only about advancing the gospel. I want you guys right now, I know I've asked you, this is like interactive, I've asked you guys to do this, but I want you to raise your right hands right now. I need you guys to pray for me. So this is for me. Everybody raise your right hand. I want you to say, Father, I pray for Pastor Matthew that he would stop being so stupid and getting so upset about stupid things that it takes him away from what does matter, from his purpose. Okay, now put your hands on the person to your right and to your left and say, God, I pray for this person that they would stop being so petty, allowing things that don't matter to ruin their day, rob them of their joy, poison their spirit, and distract them from their destiny so they can get focused on what really matters, and that half the stuff they're worrying about, you're already working out. So they don't need an ulcer. They need to throw up their hands and praise you for being Lord of all. Amen. You going to let your chains break your praise, or are you going to let your praise break your chains? It's all about purpose. What does it matter? What does it matter? It's all about purpose, right? Perspective. If we can get on mission with what really matters, it doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter what they think. Nobody else, no person has a heaven or a hell to put you in. Only God is the one who's the ultimate judge. It doesn't matter what they think. They don't have a crown to crown you with. It doesn't matter what they think. People cannot complete you. Only Jesus can complete you. He's the only one that can fill you full. Why would we live for the approval of people who cannot complete you? Why do we do that? It doesn't matter. Only Jesus can complete me. I want you to say that right now. Say it loud. Say, only Jesus can complete me. What matters more is priority. What mattered to Paul was never popularity. Some say this, some say that, some say this, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Paul, I think he knew something. Like, he's like, I'm old now. He's thinking, I know he's thinking, he knew there was a lot of stuff in his life that he wouldn't have chosen, but there's nothing that he would have changed. He was going to keep advancing the gospel, and he was going to keep rejoicing that even though he was in chains, other believers were spreading the gospel. They were furthering that, and that was reason to rejoice because that's the purpose that he's here for. This is relevant because a lot of us are in situations right now, guys, that we would not choose. How many of you guys are in a season right now that you wouldn't choose? Nobody? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I am too, man. I came here, I thought I was going to be a student pastor, and now I'm like over students, adults, or young adults, and worship, and like I had no idea that God was going to call me to this, and I'm like, I have no clue. I'm just, whatever, God. Just, Jesus, take the wheel, please, and guide me. It doesn't matter. It's about the purpose. God's got our priorities. You know, nobody chooses to have your kid off doing something that you didn't raise them to do. You can't control them. You know, you might have raised them in church to be a certain way, but they're off on this other path. You can't control that. It's about your purpose. This is when we find out, this is when we get that wisdom, when we can come to that realization. This is when we find out what Paul found out. And I think, guys, the more that you think you're in control, I guarantee you your kids are young. Because as you get older, as your kids get older, you realize you're not in control of anything. I think Paul was saying, I would not choose these chains, but I wouldn't change it. And it's about perspective. You know, people might have said, Paul is chained to these Roman guards. But I think Paul would look at him and say, hey, these guards, they're chained to me. They're chained to me. What am I going to do? I'm going to advance the gospel. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep praising. I'm not going to let my chains break my praise. I'm going to let my praise break these chains and set these guys free. To me, the important thing, and this is what Paul said, he said, to me, the important thing is whatever you put next will determine what your joy is chained to. So if you're putting the new car that you want to buy as your priority, that's what your joy is going to be attached to. If you're attaching your joy to the relationship that you're just getting ready to get in, you're going to be let down. That's what your joy is going to be tied to. If you're putting your joy in your husband, if you're putting your joy in your wife, if you're putting your joy in your children, you're going to be let down. Whatever you put after, the important thing is that your joy will move up and down with that thing. So as your child, if your faith's in them, as they're going off and doing something that you don't approve of, you're going to be upset. If they get arrested, you're going to be down. You know, if you put your faith in your spouse and they come home mad from work and they're arguing with you, and your joy's dependent upon that, then you're going to be down and you're going to fight back with them, and then you're going to take that out on your kids. And then you're going to take that out on your friends. And what are you doing? You're letting those chains break your praise, and you're not focusing on the priority, on the purpose that's Jesus Christ and advancing the gospel. If you put your faith in the fact that the sanctuary needs to be 72 degrees and comfortable, and your chair needs to be comfortable, and there needs to be room there, you're going to be happy when you come in and we've moved the chairs around. But when the place is packed full and somebody's sitting right next to you, you're going to be like, man, I don't want to go. It's hot in there. The air conditioner don't work real well. Pastor Todd or Pastor Matthew, Pastor Tracy, they scream at me, telling me all this stuff. I don't want to go there. No, it doesn't matter. I'm looking for somebody here today that doesn't care about comfort, that doesn't care about popularity or personal preference, but that you've come to a place in your life where you just say, I want to know Him. I want to make Him known. I want real joy. Joy that the world didn't give, and joy that the world can't take away. So you ain't going to be tossed around like a load of laundry in the affairs of life. Paul, there's another thing he says, what was it? He says, my feet are locked and my hands are chained, but my mind is free. I'm here, but the mission is moving forward. The important thing, guys, is that you get to choose what comes next. What's your priority? Look, guys, I'm going to fall here. We can't have peace if we don't have His priorities, right? You can pray for it, but again, if you tie your joy to your husband, if you tie your joy to your wife, if you tie your joy to your job, are you going to put your joy in your boss and then if you're doing that, you're putting it in your boss's boss because he's telling him what the expectations are. You're going to be miserable. I can't hook my joy to my 9 to 5. I did that for a long time. Michelle and I had beautiful houses. We had nice cars. At one point in time, we had 4 car payments, a motorcycle payment, credit card bills, and it was like, man, all my faith was in these horrible choices that I'd made, right? And it was completely distracting me from God, the only purpose that we should have, the spreading of the gospel. Guys, for Paul, it was always purpose, not preference, not priority. This is your choice. One scholar, as I was reading this week, I'm just about to wrap up, guys, but one scholar said in my Bible, said Paul may have been going a little bit senile. He was in chains talking about a choice. He's like, I don't know if I want to live or die. I'm like, Paul, they didn't ask you that. They didn't ask you if you wanted to live or die. You know? That was his perspective, though. It was his choice. Remember, I'm not chained to these guards. They're chained to me. I'm going to ask God to use these chains. That's my choice. The greatest gift that God has given to us is choice. Ask yourself, what shall I choose? God ain't the only one that gives you a choice, though, right? God didn't put these chains on me, but since they're on me, I'm going to use these chains. I'm going to let him use these chains. I don't even know what he's going to use them for, but I'm going to let him use these chains. He didn't bring on this disease. He didn't bring on this divorce. I wouldn't choose it, but I wouldn't change it. See, God's going to use those chains to change me. He's going to use those chains to change you. Make the example of your grace be your choice. I remember making that choice, man. I remember whenever I came to accept Jesus Christ, I went from being this angry rocker dude that put all my faith in my job and the things that I had and what people thought of me. And the government would have said that Michelle and I were rich by the income that we made. Man, we were broke as a joke and as poor as could be and miserable. But we thought that was joy. I started pursuing Christ. I gave my life to him and submitted to the call that I knew I'd had on my life, my entire life. And he changed everything. He took those chains that I had on and ripped them off of me. And it showed me that now I live making less than I've ever made, but I'm richer than I've ever been. I stopped letting those chains break my praise. And I start letting my praise break my chains, man. It's the most important choice you're ever going to make. And again, see, when God comes at you with a choice, the devil, he follows up with all these little choices, right? And he comes at you early. He comes at you when you're a teenager or when you're early in your faith. 13 years old, you're hanging out with your friends. They're looking at a little pornography. Oh, come on. Come on, Matthew. Come on, just look at it. Feeling pressured. Just one time. Just that one time pornography, look at it. Didn't hurt anything. I'm covered by God's grace. I'll look at it again and again and again. Those same friends pressuring you. Come on, Matthew, it's just a shot of whiskey. It's just a beer. Just one time. No big deal. What's it matter? Covered in God's grace. So you make that choice. Then you do it again. And then again. And then that choice becomes a habit. Then you keep on doing it. Then that habit becomes automatic. You're no longer having a beer to relax with your friends on Friday night. You're coming home drinking a 6-pack or a 12-pack. Or you're looking at pornography because that's the expectation of what a woman is, and you can't look at your wife with love because it's like you've got this expectation of this is what it's supposed to be. It becomes your identity. What you don't know until you know is that choices don't stay choices, right? They do become habits. It's just one choice. And you make that other choice again, then it becomes a habit, then it becomes automatic, then it becomes your identity. And guys, let me tell you, the damage that we do with our mouths is way worse than what we could do with a bottle. So I'm not just talking today about whatever particular sin that you don't happen to have, right? Not just talking about alcohol or pornography. Man, gossip's probably the worst sin, and we're all guilty of it. I'm talking about the sins that we are in, the chains that we are in. Because all of us, each and every one of us are in some type of chains right now. We don't even choose anymore, probably. It's automatic. It's our identity. It's just what you do to get your way, right? Michelle wants to do something. I'm going to flip out and be mean, and I got my way. She did what I wanted. So I do it again and again and again. Trust me, that was our marriage for a long time. It's like she'd say she wanted to do this or do that. I knew how to work it. I knew how to get my way with her. I was a control freak, still am somewhat. I mean, that's something I pray about constantly with God. It's like, for me, it's like when Paul said, and I'm going to mess this up, but he said, I don't do what I want to do. I do what I don't want to do. Who will deliver me from the body of death? And he wasn't saying this before he met Christ, guys. He was a follower of Christ. He'd already had the encounter with Jesus at Damascus. This is the Apostle Paul. None of us are any different. It becomes your identity. Now it's like, now I just complain all the time. Look at the world we're in, right? It's crazy, man. Everybody's offended by everything all the time. And what's it do? It causes this division. Who do you think's given those choices out for offense? Satan's given one. It's like one little link of the chain. Then he gives you another choice, and it's like that second link of the chain. He's not coming running at you with the whole chain. If he came with this huge chain, you'd probably like, whoa, what's this crazy dude doing coming at me with a chain? He's handing you a link at a time. He's connecting those together, and before you know it, you got a little bracelet on. It's a choice, then it's a habit, then it's automatic. Then he just comes and he latches the chain on. He's got a hold of you. By the choices that you made. You try to go praise Jesus? Nope, come back over here to me. I got you right where I want you. Before long, that's your identity, guys. It's all about a choice. I'm a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. That's the glorious thing about God's grace. The Bible says when we let ourselves be set free, right? When we accept Christ and we allow ourselves to be set free, we're covered in His grace. We're no longer slaves to sin. It says in John, I think, chapter 8, verse 36, it says, how does it say? I can't remember. I'm going to misquote it. It says, who the Son sets free is free indeed. Like the song. We accept Christ, and He's going to set us free. Just like Paul let the devil know, I'm not chained to these Roman guards, they're chained to me. As the worship team comes back up, and we close today, everybody in here has a choice. Everybody in here is serving something. What do you want to serve? Who do you want to serve? Paul identified himself as a servant of Jesus Christ. What he meant was that grace is a bigger chain than sin. No matter what my life may say, no matter what my decisions say otherwise, grace is bigger than that chain of sin. I'm a child of God. I'm going to wander off sometimes. But God's chain of grace, I start to wander off, He's going to yank me back. He's going to pull me right back. You may be afraid to get COVID. Heck, you may not even have wanted to get out of bed and come to church today. God's chain said, come on, Miss Wendy, you're coming. You're coming with me. Come on, Miss Chloe. Yeah, you're older and the devil's going to tell you, if you go in public, you might get COVID. You might die. God's grace, that chain, come on, Miss Chloe. You know you win either way. You get sick, you get the ultimate healing, right? Guys, it's your choice today. What are you going to choose? Paul made his choice. He said, I'm going to let God use these chains to declare His grace. Everybody who's stuck in a situation that you can't change right now, sometimes the situation that you're in that you can't change is yourself. That's a tough one, man, looking in that mirror and realizing I'm the problem. Because choices become habits, habits become automatic, and it becomes your identity. Choose today. Make the choice to serve Jesus Christ. Choose today that you're going to advance the gospel at all costs, no matter what. That you're going to use the chains that you got on your wrists right now to set somebody else free. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. Are you going to let these chains break your praise, or are you going to let your praise break your chains? Come on. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You no longer lean on your own understanding of things. You lean on the understandings of Jesus Christ in all things, no matter what it is. When you don't understand it, when He's got you, when you feel like you're beat down and you're on the ground and you can't go one more minute, one more second, you remember that these chains, I'm not chained to these Roman guards. They're chained to me. I'm not going to let these chains break my praise. I'm a child of God. My choice is Jesus Christ, and who the Son sets free is free indeed. You realize then the devil's been lying to you the whole time. And that chain of grace is stronger and bigger than any chain that Satan can put on you. It's bigger than any choice.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Sing, I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. Yes, I am a child of God. Yes, I am a child, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God, and I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God.
What a wonderful message by Brother Matthew. Let's all give him a hand. I was just struck by something he said. He said, you can either let your chains break your praise, or you can let your praise break your chains. Sometimes God will use your situation to set someone else free. Isn't that amazing that God can use our troubles, our hard times to help us help someone else? and to lead them to Christ. I'd like to lead us in a dismissal prayer. Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for this group that's gathered here today, Lord. Thank you for the message that we heard and the truth that's in it, Lord. And just help us to take this message this week, Lord, and apply it to our lives and use the season we're in, Lord, to help others and to bring them to Christ. We ask that you protect us throughout this week and bring us back next Sunday. We ask these things in your name. Amen.